Well, hi everyone, I'm Don Smith, and today I want to take a look at processing a Milky Way image. Probably more than any other questions I get asked when it comes to processing in my workshops is, how do I go about processing a Milky Way? And I got to tell you, I used to do it. It was a pretty complicated way, but now thanks to the advanced masks and how easy things have gotten in the latest version of Lightroom, I've really simplified down my methods, and I'm getting just as powerful, if not better, results. So I would like to teach them to you in this video. So let's get to work. So this is an image that was captured during Gary Hart and my's winter in South Island, New Zealand photo workshop. And by the way, we have one coming up this, let's see, it would be next June. We just had this one in this past June of 25. But in June, I believe it's the 8th through the 17th, 2026, and I'll get the exact dates up here as I'm talking. And I'll leave a link in the show notes below. And I will say, as of recording this video, we only had 3 spots remaining open. It is a drop-dead gorgeous area to photograph. We'll get you into 4 different geological locations, and you'll get a little bit of everything. This image that I'm going to take a look at today is the second of 2 Milky Ways that we captured on this photo workshop. And this one is up in just outside the beautiful village of Mount Cook, where we take you for a couple of nights and we stay in the beautiful Mount Cook Lodge, right in the heart of the beautiful, some of the tallest mountains in all of the South Island in New Zealand. So this is a raw file, how I capture everything. This was captured with a Sony a7R5, and it was captured with a 12 to 24 millimeter f2.8 Sony lens. And that's pretty much what I use to capture my Milky Ways. And I can hear you kind of gasping out there saying, oh my gosh, how come you're not using like a 14 mil f1.8 or 1.4 or 1.2? I don't need to. I think with the advent of how good noise reduction has gotten with Pure Raw 5, the DxO product, and Topaz Photo AI, take your choice. You're not going to be lacking for getting noise out and not disturbing the what would we call it? I guess the overall sharpness of the image. It used to be the olden days, and you guys would know this in the olden days, going back 3 to 5 years ago, is all really, and when we would have to take some extreme noise out, there was just no way we could keep the detail in the image. Okay, so let's take a look. Everything is set just as it has come out of the camera. And I have to preface this by saying I want you to take a look up here at the histogram. And I really could have added just a tad bit more light. Here's the thing: it's gonna when it comes to processing a Milky Way, you can make your life very easy if you started with a good exposed image in the field. And the number one mistake that I see made from most people when they're out in the field is they don't use their histogram. They will be out. We're obviously shooting Milky Way, well, at least we try to, on moonless nights is when it's the best. If the moon is up and it's more than a quarter full, forget it. You're not gonna get it. It's just gonna wash out too much. You're gonna lose too much definition. So plan your Milky Way shooting around the time when the moon is not out. And that's number one. So number 2 is going to be trying to acquire focus. There's different ways we can do that. We can focus on a planet. The newer cameras now make it almost foolproof. In my Sony, we have what's called bright monitoring that I go to, and it basically gains the sensor and almost makes the sensor look like daylight. And when you put the color overlay on your focus assist, it makes it, and I choose red in mine, it makes it virtually impossible to miss focus on a shot. If that's not working for you, or you have a little bit older camera, just have somebody walk out in front of you at about 15, 20 feet, and shine a little flashlight or a headlamp back at you. Focus on the beam and you'll have focus. That's the easiest way to do it, okay? So then it comes to getting the exposure. And I always shoot wide open, f2.8. If you have a faster lens, open it up. If it's not a top of the line lens, you want to test it, because sometimes you open it up and with aberration, it's not going to be as sharp as you would hope it would be, and you're going to end up stopping down anyway. But I know with my Sony 1228 at 2.8, it's razor sharp. So test your lenses, that's the other thing. And when you find a lens you really like, go for it. Okay, the key thing, and I've alluded to this, is the histogram. I think the key mistake I see everybody make in the groups that I teach or co-teach is that they will look at the back of their camera, just the little LCD. And you're out in a dark environment and it's looking, you're looking basically at a mini computer screen in the dark. And of course, with perception, everything's going to look brighter than it really is. So you want to have that histogram up. I can tell you unabashedly, if you try to make your exposure decision by looking at the back of your LCD only with no aid from a histogram, you are probably going to get back to your computer and be at least a stop and a half, if not darker, to 2 stops, too dark. And then what happens? You're going to go and you're going to try to bring the exposure up. And what happens when we do that? Well, we don't have enough pixels that recorded information in the darkest areas of the sky or the landscape, and you're just going to pull up a boatload of noise. So get that exposure looking good. It's probably going to look a little overexposed to your eye on the back of your LCD if you have it looking right with the histogram. Okay, so I'm going to draw your attention again to the histogram here. You can see I have a little bit of room here. I was at, and this was a full dark night, I was at ISO 6400, 12 mil on the 12 to 24, and I was at 2.8 and 25 seconds. People would say, well, why don't you add 5 more seconds? Well, let's think about that for a second. 25 seconds. To just gain 1 stop, I would have to double that time to 50 seconds. What happens if I do that? I start getting the stars streaking all over the place. Really, anything outside of 15 seconds, 15 to 20 seconds out of 12 mil, probably closer to 20, you're going to start seeing the stars streaking a little bit anyway. So the only other way, you can't give back on the aperture. I'm at f2.8. I'm as high as I can go. So that means I got to bump the ISO up, and I could have probably went up to, well, to double that would be 12,800, but I could have went up to 8,000 up and around that area. But I think I'm close enough, because over here I may just be missing a little. This is just recording the white stars or these little white spots in the Milky Way core itself. These over in here. And we're shooting at the Southern Alps, that it's wintertime, and it had snow up there, so it's white snow. All right, so let's come down now, and well, before I even get into color, I want to talk about your profile. And I'm a big fan of Tony Kuiper's linear profiles, and this is no different that when it comes to Milky Way photos. However, we do have adaptive color, but you can see that's so out of whack that I wouldn't even start there. I could start here with a landscape or a vivid, but let's just try this. This usually will gain me back about a stop worth of light. So I'm just going to click on, and I have to go to Tony's page. I'll put the link in the bottom of the show notes. And this is free. You just find your camera. Mine's the Sony A7R Mark V. I'm going to close, and I'm not so sure I'm going to use this one. And then I'm just going to hit auto up here to just ballpark this. and it wanted to lighten it up like it was daytime. And actually, that's not too bad of a starting point. And really, I could probably go with that. Let's go back because I want to take a look at one more. Let's close this off and reset this now. And let's go back up, take a look at landscape, and look into the core of the Milky Way. This part right in here, I want to see how much from vivid, that would be vivid, to landscape, and there's no difference, is there? And let's close that one and hit auto. And oh boy, I'm going to Command Z out of that because that was nowhere near. So let's just tug on these sliders a little bit independently, and then we're going to get into the masking. And I want to come down to my whites and blacks. I'm going to hold, I'm on a Mac, so I'm holding my Option key. And you can see the stars are going white, so I'm going to pull that over till I get as many stars. But now you're seeing right in here, I don't want to blow out that core of the Milky Way, right? That section, see where it's blowing out? So I'm going to back that off. And then I'm just going to bring up the blacks. That's just the bottom of it, because we're going to add some of that back in processing. But that gives me a lot of room now to work. So either way, I could have went with the linear profile, but I'm going to stay with the Adobe landscape. I think we're doing fine. And now I'm not going to really do anything else. Well, I will. Let me back up. I'm going to go to my lens correction and drop my profile in and turn on remove chromatic aberration. In this shot, there probably is none. It's a nighttime shot. And then I'm going to take my sharpening off. I don't like using any sharpening in the raw image. I will do that later after we have processed it. And I think that's it. I might want to back the highlights down just a little bit. Just like so. Okay, now we're going to go, thanks to the masks in Lightroom, we're going to go in and work in masks, and we're going to divide this image up to sky and to foreground. So I'm going to come up here on top, and I'm going to come into and click on my little masking icon, and I'm going to click the sky, and you can see it does a beautiful selection of the sky. And I have a red overlay on. I could turn that off if I want to, but I kind of like it. And I'm going to just back down the exposure a little bit on the sky. I might take my highlights down just a smidgen. I'm not going to do a whole lot here. I'm going to check, and let's see if we bring up, I don't really want to bring up the whites. Let's leave those alone because we set those in the overall. And this is a big one that I see a lot. If I take the color temperature, and this bothers me, I see a lot of people process warm. And I don't know if they're doing it to try to get the core of the Milky Way warm, or I see, well, okay, it's nighttime, I got to cool it off, and I got to process it more blue. I just try to find the middle of the road. And at night, I find that about 6,000 is right in there. Kelvin is fine. I can take a look at the tint. I don't think I'm going to really mess, but let's just see. No, see, it's going to throw that purplish cast in here, or I come the other way. Conversely, it'll throw a green cast. One of the beauties of working at this shot is we're in a designated night area at Mount Cook, which means the village of Mount Cook is back over behind us as I'm looking here. But we have a bit of a mountain to our backs, and the village is so small, there's just really not enough ambient light that it's going to throw it over in the direction we're looking. And so we're going to leave it be, just as that. Now, I want to add a foreground mask, so I'm going to click on the little plus. And the way I do it, I don't go to subject. I come back to select sky. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to invert my mask. And now you see I made a mask for the landscape. So now let's not get too wild and lighten that landscape too much, because that is dark. I see a lot of people kind of go, woo, I can turn it to daytime. And I don't think that looks too good if you do that, in fact. So I'm not even sure I may just tug a point or two on the exposure is all. I may even see what the contrast will do in there. And that's darkening it down a little bit. Again, this is dark to my eyes out there. You know, I don't want to pull the shadow slider. Look at the beautiful rocks and the color in the rocks that we had in front of us there. But unless I was light painting, it would look strange if I go, gee, there was my night shot. So that's, you know, that's an artistic call you got to make. And maybe I'll just bump it a smidgen. And then there's really nothing else here. I want to go through everything. I may actually add a little bit of texture just to the mountains down there. It's not going to do a whole lot. A little bit of clarity, not much. And speaking of clarity, I forgot to add it in my sky, so we'll go back. And I'm just going to take the dehaze. And I think I'll leave it alone. Let's reset that. Okay, let's come back into our sky because, as I said, I usually like to add a little clarity, and here I'm actually going to add quite a bit. And then I like taking my dehaze slider and pulling on that because that's starting to give the separation between the stars, the Milky Way, and the sky. So now we can start out from where we were and where we've come to, and things are looking pretty good. In fact, to the point, I'm going to go back now to my overall processing and see where we're at with everything. So I'm going to recheck my whites. Whoops, again, I don't want to pull out the core of that Milky Way, and I am right there, right? So I've got to back that off a little bit. And that looks better. Now I haven't blown out any detail in there. And I want to see where I am on the blacks. And yeah, just down where they should be, down in the shadow, darkest shadowed area of the landscape itself. And anything else we can do here before we call it good? I want to come out. This is a big issue with me. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. And I recommend doing this. I'm going to do a separate video on this surround one day for you guys. I'm going to right click out here and I'm going to turn that to white. And then I'm talking about the surround. Now see how much more darker the picture has gotten as I take it down? It's perception. And a lot of us, where are we going with this stuff? We're going to go out to social media, right? Let me come back into medium gray. Let's do the same thing. And if you notice on social media, I don't know what platforms you guys are on, but Facebook, Instagram, like X, Twitter, I still call it Twitter. It's they've all got different backgrounds, right? So it's kind of hard to pick one to really say, that's it. Let's go to black. This should be where it looks the lightest to our eyes. And that looks pretty good. So yeah, if anything, I could come back. I'm at 0.4 in my overall exposure. And I might just pull up the overall exposure. I just went up to 0.65 and drop it down, and that's looking pretty good. So think about what surround color you use. Usually I'm going to use white, and I'm going to tell you why. 90% of the images that I print and I have mounted on a double white mat with a simple black frame around it. And so that's how the print's going to look to my eye. And assuming you got your screen profiled, your monitor profiled, and when you go out to print, you understand what your lab's doing, what profile you have to supply for your lab. And then you should get everything matching up when it comes back. Usually the number one complaint I hear there is prints come back too dark. And if they are, you're doing something wrong in your printing process, but that's a video for another day. So those are my tips on processing a Milky Way. This really works for any Milky Way shot I have done. It's that simple. I probably, it took me maybe 15, 20 minutes to explain it here. But when I'm working on it on my own in 5, 6, 7 minutes, I can have a Milky Way processed almost to my liking. And but take your time. And again, the key elements are in the capture. You're going to save yourself a lot of headaches here at the computer if you can get that capture dialed in. So that means, guys, use that histogram. Know where your light values are falling. Don't rely on just the screen, what it's telling your eye, because it's going to fake you out. Again, it's going to look like you're overexposing if you're exposing correctly, and overexposing by at least a stop out in the field. Okay, so trust it. Trust the histogram. It'll give you a better starting point on your raw file. Apply these techniques I taught you today, and you'll be processing a Milky Way as good as you can possibly process it. So, hey, until next week, you guys all stay out and stay creative. You know what I say, it's great for the soul, and we'll talk to you next week.